Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing story coming to us from the US. We have Dr. Melanie Barton Bragg on board today. Melanie Barton Bragg has a master's degree in social work and a doctorate in pastoral counseling and community development. She has maintained a private holistic psychotherapy practice since 1985. She is an ordained Disciples of Christ minister with Ecclesiastical Endorsement as a pastoral counselor. She is a Reiki and Rife practitioner. She has taught at the college level, led multiple workshops, consulted with organizations and churches to navigate through transitions, including educating them about sexual addiction. As a trained crisis responder, she is called in for debriefing critical incidences in private and governmental agencies. She works with experiencers and helps remove negativity from people and dwellings. She is a referral source for MUFON for those needing therapy, including hypnosis related to their experiences. Archived episodes of her 2.5-year-old internet radio show are available for listening on her website. She has been interviewed on television, radio, and online live events. She has written 4 books and is working on her 5th. Her 5th book will be in collaboration with ufologist Kathleen Martin, talking about the range of experiences people have from positive to negative, and will bring in the church's viewpoint about experiences. To contact her to lead a workshop, seminar, webinar, or teleconference, or to become a virtual client, please contact her using the email in the description box below. So Melanie, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So when did all of your experiences start, Melanie?
Probably shortly after birth. I come from a long line of people who've had paranormal experiences. My mother's mother used to say that she saw Martians. She would play with the Ouija board. She would see spirits. She had a hammer she kept under her pillow to fight off the spirits when she went to sleep. She was an interesting character who would talk to spirits that we couldn't see. And we just thought she was our eccentric Granny Mildred. And then my mom, her daughter, her only child, had psychic experiences, but she tried to lessen them because she didn't want to be classified like her mom. Weird. So mom, one of the famous things that mom saw was right before Columbine. She saw the whole event, but she didn't know what it was or where it was going to happen. And it really freaked her out after it did happen. And she would have contact with people who had died. They'd come to visit her. She would know things, premonitions, and she would just be very calm about it and just, well, you can't go there or something to that effect. So, okay. So when I was a child, from the time I was born, I was very sickly. It's almost as if I didn't belong in my body. I had severe allergies. I had colic. I had digestive issues. And so I spent a lot of time in bed. And while I would be in bed, things like fairies and elves would come and play with me. And I thought they were normal. And my mother would peek her head in the door. Who are you talking to? The elves and fairies. Oh my goodness, they're going to think you're like Granny Mildred. Stop that. That's your imagination. Leave that alone. It's like, but okay. So they would just tell me, don't worry about it. And then as I got a little bit older, I was accompanied by what I call my friend Robbie. He was probably about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, about my height because I was short as I was getting ready to go to kindergarten. And we would play together. He would tell me things. We would communicate telepathically. And he told me right before I went to kindergarten, he said, I'm going to go away and you won't see me. And I said, no, Robbie, no, we're friends. I don't want you to go away. You've been here the whole time I've been sick. No. He said, it's okay. I'll go away and you'll forget about me after a while. I said, why can't you stay? He said, because you're going to kindergarten now. And I said, well, why can't you come with me? And he said, no, I can't. Why not? He said, because other people would not understand me. Well, you're my friend. Yes, your friend, but other people can't see me. What do you mean they can't see you? Well, that's just how it is. So I'm going to have to go away now, but you'll be all right. No, no, no. So my mother again peeks her head in the door. Who are you talking to? Robbie. There's no Robbie. There's nobody there. Oh my gosh, you have a vivid imagination. Get up out of bed and go watch the Mouseketeers. You're feeling better now. And I wasn't, but I did. So I was very sick all through kindergarten. I missed half of kindergarten and ended up having to have my tonsils and adenoids out. I was anemic. I was fatigued. And so I just muddled through because Robbie wasn't there anymore. So one night, and this probably would have been in between the time that I was an infant and the time I went to kindergarten, probably about age 4, I wake up in the night and there's this man looking in my window. And it freaks me out, but I'm just looking at him going, what are you doing? And he was just staring at me. He wasn't menacing. He was just staring at me. And so I screamed, and my dad came in and wanted to know what's wrong, what's wrong. He said, oh, you just had a bad dream. And he said, you'll be all right. So he rubbed my back and put the covers back over me, and I went back to sleep. But that particular figure was one of many throughout my life. So that was the beginning.
Okay. So what type of games did you play with Robbie?
The best I can recall, because this is now 65 years ago, the best I can recall, it would be like, think of something and I'll tell you what it is. So we would do that and he would tell me, or think of a happy thought. And it would be like, in a sense, he'd take me there in my mind to take me off my sickness, because I was nauseated, fatigued, very weak, very pale, very thin. And so he would help me cope with the illnesses.
So all of this happened in your bedroom?
Some of it happened also in the living room. I remember playing with him behind the couch. And my mom said, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? My friend. Well, what does he look like? So I told, she said, you're just imagining it's Casper the Friendly Ghost. I said, okay. So are you Casper? No. So, he was Robbie. That was the name I gave him because he told me I could name him whatever I wanted.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
Now,
So
you talked about fairies. Now, could you describe them? Because we've got so many depictions of fairies out there. So what did you actually see?
they would have been very, very tiny, like maybe 3 inches tall. And they had wings that would flutter. And they were kind of like their support. I don't remember them saying anything to me. They were like in their fairyland playing on my floor. I could see, it was like a forest, and I could see them there. And they knew I was there, but we had a loving connection. There wasn't any anger, menace, fear. It was just, I got to watch them. They got to know I was there.
Okay. I had this weird dream once that, well, I call it weird, but it's out of place, but I don't normally, dream of this, is that I'm like, maybe like a few inches tall. I'm in the woods. I remember the grass being really tall. I remember like a twig or something at an angle, and they're like lily pads or whatever, the little people in front of me. I don't remember seeing their faces, but I remember that, that their presence being there. And I was brought to them to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I remember. The background, them being there, and I was being introduced, and I wake up. So you went to kindergarten and everything stopped?
Well, it kind of lessened up a little bit, and I had my tonsils and adenoids out, so I got better. And then we left the house we were in, where I saw the man in the window and the fairies and Robbie, and we moved to a house about a few blocks away. It was a house that was built like in 1900, and it used to be a doctor's office. And I couldn't understand why I was afraid to go upstairs. And this would have been in second grade when we moved there. And I would say to my mom and dad, I don't want to go upstairs. No, I don't want to go to bed. I want to sleep down here on the couch. No, you can't sleep on the couch. You need to go to your own bed. But I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of. Would you stay with me till I go to sleep? No, you're a big girl now. You don't need us to do that. It's like, okay. So when they would leave, I put the covers over my head. And in my room was a wardrobe that my mom kept, like my dad's old army uniform in, winter blankets, things like that. And in my wardrobe lived a Native American chief. And he scared the living daylights out of me. And he would just watch me. And he had the most crystal blue eyes. Why would a Native American have blue eyes? I don't know. But he would look at me, and I could tell he was looking at me, even with my eyes closed, even with my head under the covers. And it'd be like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm here to guide you. I said, what does an 8-year-old need with guidance? I don't need this. He said, I'm here to help you. And I said, I don't want help. Go away. He says, I will go away now. You'll forget about me, but I'll come back later. And I said, okay. He says, remember Robbie? Well, I'd forgotten about Robbie because I was supposed to. I said, yeah. He said, it's okay. I'm here. I'll come back. So he left, thank God, because I was petrified. And then there was a room off of my bedroom upstairs, and it was a storage room. And the temperature in that room was drastically different than in my bedroom. It was very, very cold. And I always felt there was a presence in there. And I wouldn't look. So one day I was upstairs getting something out of my room, and my mom came upstairs to get something out of the storage bin that had like mothballs and blankets and stuff. I can still smell the mothballs to this day. So she went downstairs to answer the phone because we only had one phone in the house in those days. And she left, and I happened to look in the room, and outside there was a little square window, and outside the window I could see a boy about 6 years old sitting on the roof, and he was blue, skin blue, like not breathing blue. And he saw me and I saw him, and I freaked out, and I ran downstairs, and I said, I can't go upstairs anymore. Why? Because there's something up there. And I wouldn't tell my mother what, because she'd say, we need to take you to the hospital. So I knew he was there. He was always there. When I would go to bed, when I would go up in my room, if I'd bring a friend over to play, I'd go upstairs. But if I was by myself, I wouldn't. Or I'd run upstairs and grab something and run back downstairs. And I didn't know till years later that I could have helped him, that he knew I could see him, and he didn't know he was dead. He turned out to be probably one of the patients from that doctor's office when that house was a doctor's office, and probably died there and was just sitting on the roof. So in the picture, you can see the house with the roof, and it's sitting on that roof is where he was. Oh. And it wasn't till just probably about a year or so ago now, I was able to go back with meditation and to tell him, I'm sorry I didn't help you then. I didn't know what to do, but I can help you now. So I helped him cross over to the light now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of these stories are sad, though. Not having souls not be able to go to where they need to. They can't. I know some of them need healing, I suppose.
Well, I know now that that's my job, that I came into this incarnation, that I'm to be a facilitator, that I'm to help people wake up and to realize who they really are and what they're here for. And I'm to help those who are stuck to move on. And for those that don't feel love, I am to show love until they can love themselves.
Oh. So you talked about a man sort of spying on you as a kid. So that entity, that being, I suppose, came back?
Yeah, he came back. We moved after I got married. We moved to a haunted house in Syracuse, New York. And in the basement, I would see that same man. And I'm thinking, I haven't seen you since I was 4. Why are you here? And as it turned out, I asked my landlord, who lived across the street, I said, what's going on in the basement? Because at nighttime, my neighbor and I could hear somebody hammering and sawing at the workbench. And so I got scared, something's going on. What is it? So I asked him, he started laughing. He said, that's the man who built the house. He died at his workbench. He died in like 1944, something like that. And he built the house back in early 1900s. And so apparently after he died, he came to me where I was in Michigan and then showed up again there in that house. And in that haunted house, my neighbor and I went down. We decided we'd go down to the basement one night together to see if we could confront whoever it was, shaking in our boots, just scared to death, but we're going to do this. So we go downstairs. She comes from her side of her basement. I come to mine. There's a door between us. I unlock the door and the noise stops. So I didn't know what to do about him because I didn't know how to send spirits to where they needed to go. So that's one I haven't sent, and I need to go back and talk to him and let him. So, but he would watch me as I do laundry. I could see him out of the corner of my eye because, 1944, I don't think they had washers and dryers like they did. And that would have been 1972 that I was there. So the other thing that would happen is I was pregnant with my second child, and I would take an afternoon nap. I'd put my son down for a nap and I'd take a nap. And while I was napping, there would be rapping on my headboard over my bed. Melanie, 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 Melanie. And it'd be like, what? And then it'd stop. And then I'd go in the kitchen and I had a radio, just normal radio back in the 70s with the local station, and they'd play a song. My Melanie Makes Me Smile. Well, my neighbor came over and she heard it too. We said, I wonder who the musicians are that created that song. So we called the radio station and they said, we're not playing that song. We don't even know what that song is. So when it would play, I'd call my husband at the store where he was the manager and I'd say, listen to the radio now. And he'd said, it's not playing. You're crazy. That's not happening. So if you research the song, it came out 2 years after I heard the song. And it's from a group in Australia.
Well, I wanted to know if, as a kid, were you ever abducted? I've had people in my room as a kid, but I don't remember being taken. So I was wondering if that might have happened to you.
If I was taken, I don't remember it. And I've had hypnosis to try to see, but it was just one session with Kathleen Martin. So later we may research it further, but I have had lots of contact, lots of visits, lots of markings on my body, lots of evidence that they have come. But and I'll get into this further, what they explained to me is I made an agreement to come here. And like many of us, I'm not 100% human. And I don't say that to freak people out. It's just, I know. So I don't have to be taken in order to prove that they exist because I'm part of them. And what I'll explain later is when I met the Council of Eight, Shiva, who is the watcher in the ninth dimension, she has actually physically appeared to me and has called me. She says, literally, you are my daughter. So I don't have to see craft. I don't have to be abducted because I'm facilitating on this end. Happens.
Okay. So yeah, you're doing your part. You've got a job to do when you're doing it. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Didn't want to, but then finally did. When I was in high school, my mom and my sisters had gone to Rochester, New York to meet my older sister's fiance for a weekend to meet his parents. And I was sick. I often was sick, but I had a fever. So I decided not to go because I didn't know if I was contagious. At church, we had gotten a Sunday school paper, and the Sunday school paper was about missionaries in Africa and how they encountered evil spirits. And the story freaked me out being home alone. So I took it downstairs and I put it in our burn barrel, which you could have back in those days in Michigan. And I went up and I went to bed. And when I woke up the next morning, as I went in my closet to get clothes out for the day, that paper floated down from the shelf in my closet to the floor. And it freaked me so bad. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And I finally got enough courage to grab it, run back downstairs, grab the matches off the kitchen counter and put it in the barrel and burn it. And then when I came back in the house, I was frozen. I could feel a presence in the house and I couldn't move. So I sat in a chair by the front door. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't eat anything. I was like I was paralyzed. And I sat there until my mom and sisters came home. And of course, trying to explain it to them, oh, your imagination again. You're just anxious because you were home alone. So that happened to me when I was a junior in high school. About a year and a half later, I had graduated high school. I was going to a local community college, and I had spent 2 summers working on Mackinac Island. And I met a bunch of people there, and some people lived other places than that. And one of the people lived was in Rochester, New York, where my sister and had just married her husband and moved. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, this shimmering figure stands at the end of my bed and wakes me up. And I'm looking and I'm going, okay, who are you? Are you an angel? What are you? And telepathically it said, you are to move to Rochester, New York. I said, no, I'm not. I'm in college. I'm here. I'm not going there. I can't do that. And it said, go. Okay. So within 48 hours, I was on a plane and I moved to Rochester, New York. Now tell me how I was able to do that. I don't know. Things were aligned for me to do that.
Did this being have any like physical traits to it, or was it just like one big?
It was almost like a hologram. It was very bright, almost like a light shining in through the window. It probably would have been at least 6 feet tall, had like a robe on, but it didn't feel like it was in human form or solid form. It was more like a hologram.
Wow. Could you see through it?
No.
Okay. I had a gray face, the face of a gray, like hover over my bed, but I could see through it. So it took me a while to realize that something was actually looking back at me, but I was able to trace around the head. So it had like a guitar pick shaped head, or like a pear shaped head, let's say, but it had really huge round eyes, but at the top of the forehead, let's say. But mine was see-through, so that's a bit interesting. So you actually moved, I suppose, after that?
I did. I moved to Rochester, New York, and about 3 months later, I met my first husband on a blind date. So wow. I'm sure that was part of the reason I was supposed to move there, because he was then called to the ministry. And so we moved from New York State to Indiana for him to go to seminary. And I had experiences there too. But again, I was very ill. I had temperatures of 104. All my joints were swollen and red and hot to the touch. And I was fatigued. By then I had 2 kids. And a significant thing happened in Indiana. One day I was in the basement doing laundry, and I got these horrific pains in my uterus, ran upstairs, and I had a miscarriage. I didn't even know I was pregnant. And it was not a good situation. We were very poor. Being in the ministry and being in seminary at the same time, you don't have a lot of money. And so my husband was concentrating on studies and the 2 churches he pastored. So I kind of had to figure out how to navigate through that. And I was depressed and I was ill. And I was drinking at the time because I thought that would take care of the pain. It didn't. It made it worse. And I'm sure it contributed to the miscarriage. But I looked at the fetus and it was about that long. So I'm not sure how far along I was, but it was pretty significant. And that relates to later when I met him. So we can talk about that next, or we can talk about what leads up to that.
So do you think the ETs or whatever beings got involved in your love life?
I think that they have been directing my life from day one.
Okay. Because I know that there's someone that wrote a book, I think, called Love Bites or something to that effect.
Okay.
And how like ETs do matchmaking because they want a certain effect out of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't know. I felt drawn to this person, but after many years of therapy after, found out that was not a positive attraction. It was not the most positive thing in my life. And I don't want to say too much. I don't want to put negativity on another person.
Okay.
It's just, I wasn't in a good place.
So let's talk about the future of the fetus, or what happened after that.
Okay. All right. So in 1980, this miscarriage would have been in 1975. So in 1980, we had moved to our first church that we were going to serve as pastors. And we were living in a small house with the yellow trim with the red and white brick sort of facade. And I got stung by 4 bees. And when I was stung by 4 bees, I went into anaphylaxis, which is where you stop breathing and your throat closes. So I had shoved 2 Benadryl down my throat on the way to the hospital. But as we're approaching the hospital, I feel my spirit rising out of my body. And I'm not afraid. I'm not worried about it. And I'm just saying to my husband, I can get the words out, don't worry if you can't get to the hospital in time. It's okay. And my kids are crying in the back, Mommy, don't die, don't die. And they get me to the hospital and I get treated. And my husband asked the doctor, had we not gotten her here, how much time did we have left? He said, about 5 minutes, and it would have been too late. So when they knocked me full of the epinephrine and got me back, I just felt different. Things that used to interest me didn't. And I just felt discombobulated. But I continued to try to handle things with alcohol, because I don't know if you know much about people who use spirits, alcohol. They're trying to deny the spirits that are trying to help shape their life. And it didn't match with my Baptist upbringing with the things that I experienced. So it's like disconnect, cognitive dissonance. So I couldn't deal with it. So I drank. And that happened until May 13th of 1983. It was decided that I would have a bladder biopsy to see why I kept having supposed infections, why I had pain all the time, why I had unusual things happening in my uterus and in my bladder. So under anesthetic, they did a biopsy. And when I woke up, the doctor told me, you have a thing called interstitial cystitis, which technically is arthritis of the bladder, causes the bladder to shrink and harden, and is very, very painful. And I ended up back in the hospital after they released me after 13 days. I said, they don't know what they're talking about. The doctor said to me, you can't drink alcohol with this disease. And I'm thinking, how does he know I drink alcohol? Well, because they do your blood alcohol before you have surgery. They check your blood. And it was very high because I drank the night before I went in, because I thought, if I'm not going to live, I want to party. And so they had a hard time waking me up. And he told me after, he said, you can't drink. So I go home, and it's June 13th, 1983. And I said, well, I'm just going to try some Kahlua in my coffee. I ended up in horrific pain. I'm screaming, I'm writhing in pain. And I call out to God, God, please take me. I can't handle this. And a voice very, very clear, more clear than a human, said to me, if you want me to, I will take you. But if you want to fight this, I will help you fight this. And I said, I'll try. So I went back to the hospital, to the emergency room. They shot me full of 2 medications, Talwin and something else, knocked me out. I slept for 12 hours, and I didn't drink alcohol since that day. But in 1984, my doctor said, I don't know what to do about all these physical symptoms you have. You're still not better with the bladder disease. So we're going to take you off yeast and off all sugar. So he took me off all that stuff. I was sick as a dog. And he said, here, take this medication. This will help you with the spasms and everything you're having. I had said to him, don't give me anything addictive. Oh, I won't. He did. gave me morphine, and I didn't check it out. And so I got hooked on it within a few days. I was eating it like candy in front of my drug and alcohol clients. And one of my clients said to me, Miss Barton, you're jonesing. What's going on? And I said, oh, nothing. I'm just dealing with medication. And so I decided then and there, I can't do this. As a drug and alcohol counselor, I can't be addicted to this. So with the help of my spouse, I didn't go to a detox, which I should have. That would have been what I tell my clients to do. But if I did that, I would have been fired. They would have known I was hooked on drugs. So on July 29th, 1984, over the weekend, my husband helped me detox off the morphine. And so my sobriety date is July 29th, 1984.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
Oh.
So let's move ahead to 1991. The urologist says that you're in a lot of pain because your bladder has dropped because we had to remove your uterus back in 1980. And I said, okay. He said, it'll be minor. You'll have a few days where you won't be able to function, but you'll be okay. And I said, all right, let's do it. So it's to be an outpatient surgery. My husband's going to pick me up at the end of the workday. I go, all right. So I pray and I put myself in God's lap before I'm knocked out, because I always do that. I had multiple surgeries. I was sick a lot. I learned to do that. So in the short time they had me under, my blood pressure dropped. And when it dropped, I left my body. I went out of my body up through the ceiling. And I went, just like they say in the near-death experience, I saw a light. And when I saw the light, there standing to greet me was Mitchell, the son that I miscarried. And he was the age he would have been. He was 16 had he lived. And I said, Mitchell? He said, yes, Mom, it's me. Here I'm the age I would have been had I lived. It's okay. And he said, do you want to go meet the others? And I said, Mitchell, I'm so happy to see you. And I could hug him. He could hug me. And he said, come on, Mom, you want to go meet the others? I said, what others? He said, come on, I'll show you. So he and I got into a little dark blue rowboat. He stood up at the front and he was paddling, standing up with a paddle. And it only took like maybe a minute or two to get to the shore. I could see a bunch of figures on the shore, couldn't make out who they were. And we got close to the shore. They pulled the boat in and we got out. And then I began to notice, oh, Judy, you died when I was in 8th grade from a car accident. Alan, you died from a head injury when I was in 4th grade. Granny Mildred. And then I started to recognize all these people. And then a figure stepped forward, the tall figure that was translucent, and said, we brought you here. And I said, I remember this place. I've been here before. I remember starting to approach this in 1980 when I had my out-of-body experience. They said, yes. I said, do I get to stay now? And they said, no. I said, why not? And they said, we brought you here to show you some things. I said, okay, what? And they said, when we send you back, you're going to go back and your job is to love people that feel unloved until they can love themselves. And the second thing is that every client who comes to you, they will unconsciously choose you. You are to recognize that they are a gift, and you are to open up their presence, their inside, to bring it to the outside. And I said, okay. And they said, we'll help you. And I said, well, how are you going to help me? They said, we'll guide you. I said, well, how do I know you'll guide me? And they said, well, you'll forget all this, but when the time comes, you'll remember each thing that we showed you. And I said, well, how am I going to remember? How am I going to be guided? And they said, remember, Robbie stepped forward, remember me. The Indian chief stepped forward, remember me, like that. And so I was back in my body and I was different. I started being interested in ecology, climate change, recycling. I tried to go back to the church where I worked and it didn't fit. I couldn't be a religious person. I was now a spiritual person. And so I said, I don't know what's happened to me, but I'm not the same person. And my spouse noticed that I was different, that I would not tolerate things and religious dogma. And so from there, that was 1991, about a year or so later, I was asleep and they took me, and I assume now it was my guides, and I'll get into who and what they are. They took me and they said, we're bringing you to a higher spiritual level, a higher vibrational frequency. If you choose to, you can make the leap to go to a higher plane. You don't have to, but if you do, you can't ever go back to where you were. And in that spiritual experience, my spouse was there with me, and he heard what they said, and they said he could go too if he wanted to. And I said, okay, I will. So I made the leap, and he didn't. So they put me back in my body. I wake up, I'm discombobulated, and I'm looking around going, I'm not the same person. I've made this leap. And they told me, do not discuss it with anyone. And I thought, okay. So I wake up, and my spouse noticed I was different and said, what is wrong with you? And I just said, I had a dream. Well, tell me about it. I can't discuss it. Why not? I'm your husband. You. And eventually he got it out of me. So by him getting it out of me, by me giving into that, it thwarted my spiritual growth for 15 years. It was 15 years from then before I could decide that this marriage is not nurturing for me or for him. So after that experience, again, I was elevated. I started having groups of people that we would meditate, making contact. Experiencers started coming to me for therapy. And then in November of 1993, we were in Washington, D.C. over Thanksgiving weekend. And I wake up, and here's that figure again, that tall figure that was at the end of my bed that was there in the near death. And he said, you are to set up a holistic clinic. I said, no, I'm not. I'm in a group practice. I'm very happy in my group practice. I'm making good money. No, I'm not. And he said, you will. And this was one of those things that they told me they would tell me when it was time. So that was November. By February, that was November of 92. By February of 93, I had a practice open with other practitioners, massage therapists, nutritionists, chiropractor, financial planner, all within that short period of time.
Wow. So you were guided to start all of this to at least help you out with your mission. That's amazing.
Yes, yes. My daughter and I have a connection, and so do my sister and my younger sister and I. But my daughter and I, we will get a sinking feeling if somebody we know is going to die. And so we don't even say anything. We just say, who is it, when we contact each other. And she'll go, I'm checking this side of the family. You check that side of the family. And it's never been wrong. So she knows when something's up with me. She'll go, what is it, Mom? She doesn't even ask, are you okay or anything? What is it, Mom? And so we just have that connection.
Oh. So you had this sort of NDE-ish type of thing happen. You came back. You eventually broke up with your husband.
Yeah, I'll tell you the details, what I feel comfortable sharing.
Okay.
So in 1997, a client came to see me, and spouse came with the person. And the spouse didn't want to be there, refused to sign the paperwork. So long story short, when it came time for the divorce, the husband claimed I broke his confidentiality. So it's a long involved thing that I won't go into. So as a result, I was forced. I had to take a course in ethics to make sure I was not harming anybody's confidentiality. So I did. And as a result, I decided to go ahead and get my doctorate because I wasn't sure if they were going to take away my license. And I also at the same time went ahead and got fully ordained so that if I couldn't be a social worker, I could be an ordained minister and a pastoral counselor. So in that process, people stopped referring clients to me because, number one, my licensure board notified the insurance companies about this complaint against me, which was breaking my confidentiality. And then clients who had been pre-authorized to see me couldn't see me anymore because of this. So I sued my licensure board and we settled in mediation. But as a result, I made the decision to leave where I was because I didn't know if I was going to get to do my work as a social worker. So we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. And I started co-pastoring a church because I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, and I'm not going to wait to find out. So we're pastoring 2 churches, and in one of the churches, it's haunted. Now, other people won't go in the church alone at night because everybody knows it's haunted. And so I'm able to see a minister who was a circuit rider back in, I don't know when circuit riders were in the United States, but I could see him. And he was there. And I didn't know then how to send him to the light, but I know how to do that now. And if he's still there, I can go back and do that. But I started learning how to do cleansings on churches and people and started to do so. And then we were there for 5.5 years and decided things weren't good between us or with the churches. So we do a geographical cure. Done that many times. They don't work, but try it. So we moved to Alabama. And by that time, I was able to maintain my license. I got a license also in Alabama, so I could work there, finish my doctorate. And I began to pick up on things that were not right. And long story short, I ended my marriage only when I got colon cancer. Prior to that, it was always take care of everybody else, but not me. And so I recognized the tumor that I got was my ticket out, that it was my time to take care of me, that that's what I was supposed to do. So I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I had 5 TIAs, which are like a minor stroke, but you recover. And I had Lyme disease and 7 co-infections. So I had to close my practice. But prior to closing the practice, an interesting thing happened. And I'm not going to go into the details of where this is because I don't want somebody coming after me. But I saw a client who had had very unusual things happen to them, found out that they had been part of a governmental program against their will. And while I'm working with this person, my office is broken into 4 times. They stole my security camera. They came into my office with the door locked while I was there. They tapped my phone. They followed me. And so later I asked somebody to check and see, was the stuff I was getting a figment of my imagination? Was this person telling the truth? And the sources that were checked said, cease and desist, or Dr. Barton and her client will be killed. So I did. I'm not going to get anybody killed. So all that happened prior to me getting cancer. And what my client told me is every therapist that person had got cancer. So I don't know whether it's coincidence or not. Don't care. So when I found that I had cancer, my daughter graciously offered for me to come and live with her in Florida, which I did. And it took me a long time to recover because I was so sick. But as I began to recover, I didn't have the defenses to fight off what my guides would want to show me. So they started showing me, they wanted me to build a house, a round house. And I said, well, I don't have any money. How am I going to do that? And they said, it will be revealed. And they started talking to me and telling me things that I needed to know, how to heal, what treatments to use, how to help other people. And so I started to do that. And 4 years after I was divorced, after I was diagnosed with cancer, I met my second husband. And he was just a kind man who wanted to make sure that I was taken care of in a loving way. So we married December 14th, 2013. And then 10 months into our marriage, he had a stroke and died. And I was devastated, but I also felt like it was okay, that I had come through everything I had experienced. And he came back to me after he died and he said, I don't want to go. And I said, you're supposed to go. He said, but I told you I'd take care of you. And I said, I know, but you have. You taught me, as I was told I was supposed to do for others, you taught me that I was lovable and I could love myself. So you've accomplished what you came to do, So you can go. He said, you sure? I said, yes. So he left. And the next morning, my sister was visiting and my grandson was visiting. And I said, did you notice anything last night? And my sister said, yeah, he was here. I said, yeah. And I asked my grandson, who was 3 at the time, did you see Woody? He said, yeah. I said, where was he? He said, he was right beside you in bed. I said, yeah, you're right. He was. So after that time, my grandson and I began staying in town because I was living at an outer area. And it was an hour drive to go into where I was starting to work. So I would stay with my daughter at her apartment with my grandson. And one night, my grandson and I were taken. And what I remembered the next morning was a beam of light coming and taking us. And I wasn't afraid. He was, but I comforted him. And he didn't remember it the next day, but I did. So I kept track of that. And then as I would go back to my home, the hour away, one night I woke up and there was a 7-foot tall figure, very much like the one that stood at the end of my bed, like my near-death experience, and a short one like Robbie. And they said, hello. I said, oh, what are you doing? It was familiarity. There wasn't any anger or fear. And they said, we're working on you to help you get better. So just go back to sleep. So I did. And I woke up the next morning. I had evidence that they had worked on me. So I contacted MUFON to begin to tell them about some of my experiences to see, just to report it because that was the right thing to do. And one of the people that I spoke with, her name's Alita. She's one of the MUFON investigators. She said, you know what? You're in Florida and you're not too far from Denise Stoner and Kathleen Martin. They're part of MUFON. Why don't you make contact with them? So it just so happened that I was going to Orlando to have a week of rest and relaxation, and I invited them to come, and they did. So we got to know each other. We talked for hours. And they said, why don't you come to our conference that we're having in Orlando, 2016, in August? And I said, okay. So I did. So at the conference, at lunchtime, I go and I sit at a table and I'm talking to a woman, and there's one seat empty across from me. And a gentleman comes up and he says, do you mind if I sit here? I said, no, that's fine. He introduced himself. His name is Kevin Briggs. And he told me his story, that he's been visited since he was 8 years old, and that they told him he's supposed to write a book and he needs help. And after hearing me talk to the woman who was next to me, he said, do you think you could help me? I said, well, I'll try, sure. So we arranged for him to meet with me, Kathleen, and Denise at Kathleen's home. So he starts talking and telling us stuff. And Denise and I look at each other and we go, do you know what he's doing? Yeah. Kathleen goes, what? What? He's channeling. He doesn't know this stuff. He's telling stuff through him. And he said, what's that? So we told him, and we said, would you like to see if you can tell us more and help us? He said, okay. So once a month, we started going to his home, and his wife, Sandy, was very gracious, had snacks for us, and we recorded it. We checked the temperature in the room to see what the temperature difference was. We checked the energy in the room. The first or second time we met, I had my phone with me and it got fried. It just totally fried. And all of us in the room could feel like a tingling from head to toe. And at first, he couldn't do very long because it was very draining for him to pull his personality aside and let the spirit, the channeling, come through. So Ort would come through. This is a council of 8, a galactic council. And let's see if I can remember all their names. There's Ort and Dee, husband and wife. There is Arna and Orla and Chika and Targ and Zark and Ra, which is not the Egyptian god Ra, and Shiva, which is the watcher over it. And so session by session, month by month, they would teach us things. They would tell us in one session, they said, when you go home, you pick a night and a time and we'll show up with a craft. So we each picked a time, and mine was on a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock. So go out on my back porch where they're supposed to show up, and my neighbors are next door partying. They never partied. It was like, oh, come on, they're not going to show up now. So at 10 o'clock, there was this huge burst of light. And I said, If that's you guys, do it again. Burst of light. And so after that, I'd go outside at 10 o'clock each night. And when I'd go out my front door, the street light would turn off when I go out. It's like, okay. And then orbs would show up. And so we met for about 2 years off and on every month. And then they gave us assignments of things we were supposed to do. From that, I developed a Wednesday night meditation group with Kathleen and Denise and a couple of others that were allowed to come in. And we did that for 2 years. And then they gave us assignments. And one of the things that's happened since my work, since the near-death experience, is I'm able to have contact with people who've left their bodies on the other side, and I'll get messages. And if my guides want me to have a message to tell somebody, they'll give me a high-pitched squeal in my right ear, or I'll feel tingling all up and down my body. And so I listen, but I have the choice to say, no, this is a first session with somebody. I'm not going to tell them their deceased grandmother's here until I know they're okay with it. And so I'll explore it. And then if they're okay with it, I'll tell them. And more times than not, there's tears of joy. I ask for some evidence. You're telling me exactly the answer to my question. I just go, I'm just the messenger. You need to check it out to make sure it's real. It's not my job. I just give you the message. So
that reminds me of when my mom passed away. My dad, who's not really much into this, but he went to see a medium, and that person channeled my mother. And my mother, when she came through, she told my dad to take care of all the flowers, because they just changed all the flower beds in front of the house, because my dad had a beautiful house by the lake. And the fact that she knew that, well, that really convinced him that it wasn't legit, that my mom came through. So it's really healing, though. So you're doing a great service to humanity when you do that.
Yes. Yes.
So,
and I would say virtually everybody that I feel okay telling has accepted it very well.
So that's how you got involved with Kathy regarding your 5th book?
Yes. Yes. So we started working, and her book, Forbidden Knowledge, talks about our research that we did with the Council of 8. And her stories are there. So I really recommend people read Forbidden Knowledge by Kathleen Martin. The book that she and I are collaborating on is going to involve a survey of people filling it out, talking about, how their ET contact has affected them, including things like, how has it affected your belief system, your religious belief system? And as a result, what has changed? And it's also going to look at, this is another factor we're just adding in with the help of somebody in a group we're in. He suggested we look at, how did it affect your family? Because the family dynamic is so often affected. People split over it, or people think you're crazy. And so it would be a good thing to explore. When I do cleansings on people and dwellings, when somebody's had an attachment, an entity, discarnate soul, or whatever it is, when I work with them, I look at, what is the reason that this has come? And after we remove it, then I look at, what did you learn? I learned that it didn't have to control me. I learned that maybe I need to listen to my own intuition. And when they do that, they don't have fear. And when you don't have fear and you have love, it can't attach. I have ongoing contact. I can make contact as I wish. I'm going to explain the process, and then if people want to know more, they can reach me. But in my meditations and my work with the Council of 8, they taught me that there is a thing called a healing chamber. And I direct people. I have created meditation so you can put yourself into the healing chamber. And doing so, you can actually feel what happens to your body. I take people through, let me see if I can show you. I'm going to show a picture. When I lead them in the meditation, can you see that?
Give it a second. Slightly. Looks like an upside down bell with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is what is called the grid. And when I do the meditation, then after they give the command for the grid to pull aside,
Wow.
then this is the aperture. So it's like a camera lens, and you give the command for the aperture to open, and then the person goes through it. And what happens once you're on the craft, you go through a viscous liquid that's purple. It's like a gel, but you can breathe, you can walk through it, it doesn't stick to you. And what that's doing is it's removing anything you brought in from this dimension. And when I take you in the meditation, it's leading you up to that dimension, that vibration. They have to come down, we have to come up. And so this is the way to do that.
Wow.
So one of the ways I know that I've had ongoing contact is I had a body scan done, and the biofeedback technician said, I said, what? He said, you have radiation, the level of radiation that only astronauts get. Where have you been?
Amazing. So I had a friend that she had a lot of health problems, but she was an abductee. She was taken on board craft, and she was shown like councils and stuff as a kid. But when she got her blood work done, the doctor said, "This is strange. The type of blood the results that we've got, when you can compare them to the type of blood that astronauts have."
Yeah.
Like she was on board,
Yeah.
a craft for too long, and that affected her.
Yes.
So you got irradiated. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So did you get sick from that?
I've been sick my whole life. So I think what they told me this back in about 2017. They said, I made the decision to come into this body. I don't really fit this body. And the consequence of not fitting the body is it's like things don't match up. And that's why I'm sick. And they offered in 2017, they said, we can take you out, meaning leave this universe, but it's your choice. And I said, I don't want to leave my kids or my grandkids or my clients. And they said, okay, remember that when times get bad and you wish we'd taken you. And I said, okay. So my earthly counsel of four said, maybe you should have taken them up on your offer and went. I said, okay. So this past September, I had pretty bad COVID. And I'm talking to the council going, can you help me out here? And they said, we are. We don't want you to hasten the process to heal. We're working on you, but let us do our work. We are altering some things to make it so you can exist. So just let us do our work. So I go to sleep, I go into deep sleep, and they'd work on me. And so one of the ways that I know they worked on me, and you don't have a picture of this, but I can send it to you later. There is like an inoculation on my right thigh. It came up one night. Well, it came up, showed in the morning. It was red, and there was a circle, and there was like little dots, like they had done a puncture. Mm-hmm. And that thing is still there. It itches like crazy. And I have another family member that has the same thing.
Okay. So she was abducted as well?
I don't know for sure. I've been asked to not share the details because they prefer to, if they're going to do it, they do it, not me.
So did they do a house call, or did they take you on board? And
I've had many instances where things are done to me, and I don't know if they did it here or took me somewhere. When they've worked on me, one of the pictures you'll see is a red mark on my forehead. And then my eyes are always, the pupils are always very dark when I come back. I have a mark. You'll see the picture on my arm that showed up one morning. I've had a triangle another place. And they tell me that they're working on me to improve me. And I have 2 implants. I have one in my hand right here. And then I have one in my thumb right here. And what the council told me is that I can ask for whoever put them in. They said the council didn't do that. Whoever put them in there, you can tell them, you can't take me. I'm protected by the council. You don't have the right to take me. So when they did tell me they were working on me, I assumed what they were doing was related to the council. So I haven't asked them to do anything different, because it did improve a lot of things. Conditions that I had before COVID have improved since COVID.
Cool. So how do you feel about all of this, having friends taking care of you like that?
I feel very loved, especially by Shiva. She calls me her daughter. She tells me I'm loved. Sometimes she shows up and she puts her bird-like feather wings over me, like hovering over me, and just like an energy hug.
So she's not really the Indian deity, really.
No, she's not. It's Sheeva, and Ra is Rah. Okay. Now, he was alive during Egyptian times, but he hasn't had a body in thousands of years.
Wow. So have you ever seen UFOs up close?
Well, when you say up close, within a few yards, no.
Yeah, maybe like close to 100 feet or so.
Well, I did see one over the Air Force Base in Indiana. My sister Robin and I saw one there. It was just hovering, wasn't going anyplace. And I did see one on a CE5 2 weekends ago. There were clouds, but you could see it, the outline of it, right above the clouds. So that's the closest I've gotten. Yes. But when we did the CE5, we had the two-way radios, and they were responding to our questions.
You sent me a drawing of a metallic whirligig.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a medical instrument?
I'm not sure what it is, but when I compared it with things that Kathleen Martin told me about, she said that had been drawn before by somebody who, after her aunt and uncle, Betty Barney Hill, there was a woman who, she did mathematical equations or whatever. I don't remember her name, but she drew something like that as well.
You also sent me a drawing of a formula.
Okay. What is it? T squared?
Yeah, T equals T squared.
Okay. What they explained to me is that 1 + 1 = 1. 1 × 1 = 1. We are all one.
Okay. That's beautiful. Everything's connected, really.
Everything is connected, yeah.
No.
And that what one does affects the whole. So a group of us, when there's bad weather coming, we will meditate to try to affect the weather in a positive way. We did that for the hurricane that came to South Florida.
Ian, I believe.
Yes, Ian. Yes. So we weren't 100% successful because it was a Category 5+, but the place that it was destined to go, it didn't go.
Okay. And
then we did it before, back, I think it was 2018 or 19. There was one, we didn't get to it in time, but it was headed right for Florida, and it diverted. And we do a process where you imagine it shrinking, and we send it love, and we send it back out to the ocean. So in that one, it hit the Bahamas. It was 2019, maybe September 2019. So it hit the Bahamas, but it didn't come ashore in Florida like it was supposedly going to do.
Wasn't there a study once, I think in the US, maybe the New York area, where a lot of people meditated and the crime actually got lower that year?
It's the Maharishi effect, yes. And it happens. And that's what we were using as the premise for this. If enough people pray and meditate and visualize, it can change.
Wow.
Imagine what would happen if we did that for peace on earth.
I know, if everybody did, yeah. I know. So what's next with you? You've got a book with Kathy that's going to come out eventually. Do you have like a date to give us?
We don't yet, no. The thing that's happening is I'll have to send you a picture of my house, my round house. It is halfway done, and it has a flat roof, so you can do CE5s up there. And when I was in the midst of what do I do next, they woke me up in the middle of the night and they said, Nashaway. I said, Nashaway? What's Nashaway? So I wrote it down and I contacted a psychic friend of mine. She said, I'll work on it. I'll let you know. So she got back to me. She said, Nashaway was a Native American tribe in the Massachusetts area, and that they migrated south and intermarried with other tribes, and they became pretty much non-viable. And so she said, but they're on your property. I said, they are? She said, yeah, they're waiting for you. So I went to my property and I did a connection with them. There were 40 of them, Nashaway, and they said, we've been waiting for you. And I said, okay, why? They said, we've been protecting this land, waiting for you, and we're going to turn it over to you. And I said, that's a pretty big responsibility. I'm not sure I'm able to handle it. And they said, well, we'll be here to help you, but we need you to send us on. So I said, all right, I send you on with blessings. And as they were leaving, tailed birds, a flock of them came right up over me and flew over me. And it was like, oh, okay. I don't know their symbolism. I looked it up, but I don't remember. But it was, I did the right thing. And so each time I go to the property now, I feel their presence there. I have woods around my house, and I can feel the presence there. And so I know I'm doing the right thing.
Oh. Have you ever had contact with Robbie after that?
The only contact that I've had is like in the near-death experience. I haven't. And then when they came to work on me, I think that was him, but I didn't ask, but it looked familiar. So I can meditate and ask them if it is, but yeah. And I've also wondered if he is the figure that's on the craft that's part of the Council of Eight. His name is Zark. It's spelled Jark, but it's pronounced Zark. And he's the trickster. He will take pieces of my jewelry and like one earring. Like I might lay something out on my bed to get dressed in the morning, come back and only one earring's there. Or I'll go to pack and I get there and there's only one earring and I know I put two in. So he's done this numerous times. And in one case, it was one of my mom's earrings. And I was really upset. It was my mom's. I want that earring. So I finally took the one earring and put it in my jewelry box and said, okay, I guess it's gone. Well, months later, I go someplace else and it's there. Now, how did it get there? But it was. So that happens. And when I was in the process of moving stuff to move into a smaller place till my house is ready, I went to pull something out and there was one of the earrings that fell out of something I was pulling out. And it was like, I didn't put it in there. It couldn't have been in there. I haven't had it in over a year. So, all right, you're letting me know you're here. But it's not funny. Don't take my stuff. So I don't think that's Robbie. Although they're similar height and similar appearance, I don't think it's Robbie, because Robbie was very kind, very loving, very helpful, very supportive.
Have you ever been given gifts? I know sometimes I think there's a term called a port, where
Yes.
these rocks or whatever gifts fall out from nowhere.
I have not. If I have, I didn't recognize it, and I'm sorry to them if they were. But what I've told people who are I've got some people right now who are missing some people that died a year ago. And I said, well, ask for evidence. Ask for a penny face up to show you that, yes, what you felt and the dream you had and the experience was them. Within 1 minute, he found a penny face up.
Oh. Have you ever had experiences where like deceased loved ones would use technology to try to contact you?
Yes. My mom, when my sister and I would talk on the phone, she'd put so much static on the phone when we'd be talking about something. And we said, all right, Mom, we get that you want your 2 cents worth too. We love you. Glad you're here. And then the static would stop.
Okay.
I am part of supporting the Soul Phone Project. Are you familiar with that? Okay. David Schwartz, and I don't remember if it's Colorado or Arizona. They're doing research with mediums. They're having the psychic medium sit in a room where it's controlled light and sound, and they're getting excellent results. And they're saying that maybe within a decade, they'll actually have the technology for like a phone that you can actually talk to somebody on the other side. My daughter has abilities like I do, and hers have been increasing lately. And so she heard a voice, and I went to her home and helped figure out. I was told who it was, and she checked it out. It had been somebody that she knew back in high school, and there were, I think, three friends in the car, and it was the 16-year-old's birthday, and he died in the one car crash. And then there were two other people in the car, and one of those two people, she heard his voice, and so she checked, and yes, he had died, because I got the message he had died, and it was something related to breathing difficulties. And so she checked it out, and it was accurate.
What's the actual mission of the group that you're involved with? You know, the ETs, like the council.
Our job initially was to make contact with them, to raise our own consciousness, to connect with other groups who are also doing the same thing, and eventually to prepare the world for total disclosure. But they're doing what we call now soft disclosure, a little at a time, this group here, that group there.
And how about the council on board the craft? I think that's what the Council of Eight. What's their like mission really?
They're there to guide us, to help them with their mission.
Okay.
They call us the Earthly Council of Four.
Oh.
We'll meet again with them on February 25th. We'll meet in Orlando area again.
Okay.
And we get to ask our questions of what we want to know concerning our mission, our tasks. If there's been a development in the news, we want to know, like, we'll probably ask about, did you interfere with the Chinese balloon to keep us safe? Things like that.
Okay.
There's been a number of crafts seen over Ukraine and Russia. And they have told us, the Council of Eight has said, we will not let the world destroy itself by nuclear attack.
Okay.
We said, thank you.
Like, do you have a closing statement or perhaps another story that you might want to share with everyone?
My belief is that we are all connected, and that when you are willing and able to open up, to connect with your higher self, you will begin to understand that we're all part of this big puzzle, and we all have a piece to play. And if anybody is interested in figuring out, well, what's my part? What's my piece? I'd be glad to direct them to do that.
Thanks for coming on today. You've got a lovely story. You're a lovely person, and listening to stories like yours really helps elevate ourselves, and brings us more into a positive mood. So thanks for coming on and for sharing with everyone.
Thank you. It's been my joy.
And to those watching today's interview, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host, Mr. Gray. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Gray, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.